Hi friends, today we are going to discuss a very important topic which is included in both cardiology as well as immunology, that is acute rheumatic fever. In this lecture, we will first discuss the intro, what is the pathogenesis of this disease. Firstly, we will see the organism factors, various host factors and the immune response theory. Then what are the clinical features? Basically, this will affect the heart, joints, what is chorea, skin manifestations and other clinical features. How to diagnose this condition, what all treatment options are available, and finally the prognosis followed by prevention. You can download the MediLectures app which is available on Play Store as well as iOS to download the free PDF of this lecture, to attempt free tests and various quizzes. You can also check out Harrison based test series course which is available on the app. Now friends, acute rheumatic fever is a multi-system disease resulting from an autoimmune reaction to infection with group A Streptococcus bacteria. Now it is important to note that almost all the manifestations resolve completely except for the cardiac valve damage. And this cardiac valve damage in acute rheumatic fever is later known as rheumatic heart disease, which may persist after the other features have disappeared. Now both acute rheumatic fever as well as rheumatic heart disease are considered as the diseases of poverty, as these are more common in areas where there is overcrowding and poor health facilities. Now RHD is considered as the most common cause of heart disease in children in developing countries and a major cause of mortality and morbidity in adults as well. Acute rheumatic fever is mainly a disease of children aged 5 to 14 years. Now when we consider the initial episodes, these have become less common in older adolescents and young adults. On the other hand, recurrent episodes are common in adolescents and young adults. So initial episodes are common in children and recurrent episodes are common in adolescent and young adults. Now females are commonly affected as compared to males, and the prevalence of RHD peaks at 25 to 40 years of age. This is 25 to 40 years of age. Now in the pathogenesis of this condition, we'll first discuss the organism factors, what are the host factors and the immune response theory which leads to rheumatic fever. So acute rheumatic fever is exclusively caused by upper respiratory tract infection with group A Streptococcus bacteria. Now classically, certain M serotypes have been implicated which include 1, 3, 5, 6, 14, 18, 19, 24, 27 and 29. These M serotypes are known to cause the acute rheumatic fever. But in areas with high incidence, any strain can lead to acute rheumatic fever. Now when we consider the host factors, approximately 3 to 6% of population of any area is susceptible to acute rheumatic fever. There is also an inherited susceptibility, as there is 44% concordance in monozygotic twins as compared to only 12% in dizygotic twins. So there is inherited susceptibility of this condition also. Also, there is certain HLA associated with susceptibility while others are associated with protection. So HLA associated with susceptibility include HLA DR7, HLA DR4, while with protection include DR5, DR6, DR51, DR52 and HLA DQ. Also, associations have been described with polymorphism at TNF alpha locus, mannose binding lectin and toll-like receptors. So these all are the host factors. Now coming on to the immune response. The most widely accepted theory for pathogenesis of ARF is molecular mimicry. This means that the immune response, which was initially targeted against the streptococcal antigens, also will damage the human tissue, leading to all the clinical features, and this is due to its cross reactivity. So the antibodies which have being formed against the bacteria will also cross-react with the human tissue and damage it. So what are the streptococcal antigens against which these antibodies are forming? These include the M protein of the bacteria as well as N-acetyl glucosamine. So this was all about the pathogenesis of acute rheumatic fever. Now coming on to the clinical features, the latent period of this condition is around 3 weeks. Now this 3 weeks is the period between the precipitating group A streptococcal infection and the appearance of clinical features of acute rheumatic fever. Now it has two exceptions. What are these? First one is chorea and the second is indolent or low grade carditis. So these are the two clinical features which may follow prolonged latent periods lasting up to 6 months, and the rest of the clinical features usually follow a latent period of 3 weeks, which can vary from 1 to 5 weeks. Now the most common clinical features are polyarthritis, which is seen in 60 to 75% cases, followed by carditis, which is seen in 50 to 60% cases. Now the prevalence of chorea varies substantially between populations, ranging from less than 2 to 30%. Erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules have become rare now, and these are seen in only less than 5% cases. Now we will discuss the individual clinical features in detail. So starting with the involvement of heart, we already discussed that up to 50 to 60% of patients with acute rheumatic fever will progress to rheumatic heart disease in the later years of life. Now the valvular damage, the involvement of heart is typically in the form of valvular damage. So valvular damage is the hallmark of rheumatic carditis. When we consider that valves, mitral valve is almost always affected, followed by aortic valve. So the most common valve affected is mitral valve, followed by aortic valve. Pulmonary and tricuspid valve damage is usually secondary to increased pulmonary pressures. Now initially, the valvular damage will lead to regurgitation. So a regurgitant lesion will first develop, and over the upcoming years, there will be leaflet thickening of the valve, scarring, calcification, and then it will lead to a stenotic lesion. So first to develop is regurgitation, followed by stenosis in the later stages. Also due to myocardial inflammation, there is involvement of electrical conduction pathways which leads to PR prolongation in ECG. This is the first degree AV block, or even higher AV block can also occur. Also there is softening of first heart sound due to the myocardial inflammation. Now when we consider the joint involvement in acute rheumatic fever, it is typically in the form of arthritis. So arthritis means objective evidence of inflammation, which will be hot, swollen, red and tender joints. So the arthritis in ARF is typically asymmetric migratory polyarthritis of large joints. So migratory means moving from one joint to other over a period of hours. Polyarthritis means it will involve more than one joint, and these will be typically the large joints. Now the joints which are usually affected includes knee joint, elbow joint, hip joint and ankle joint. So it is asymmetric migratory polyarthritis of large joints. Also arthralgia and aseptic monoarthritis can be seen in some cases. Now it is important to note that the joint manifestations of ARF are highly responsive to salicylates and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Now chorea, which is the dancing movements, is known as Sydenham's chorea in cases of rheumatic fever, and it commonly occurs in the absence of other manifestations because it will follow prolonged latent periods after the group A streptococcal upper respiratory tract infection. Now this chorea is mainly found in the females and particularly in the head and upper limb region. It is typically associated with emotional lability and obsessive compulsive trait. Now let's discuss the skin manifestations of rheumatic fever. The classical rash of ARF is known as erythema marginatum. This begins as a pink macule that will clear centrally, leaving a serpiginous spreading edge. It will be seen on trunk and limbs, but never will be seen on the face. Never will be seen on the face. It is typically evanescent in nature, that is appearing and disappearing before the examiner's eye. The second skin manifestation is subcutaneous nodules. These occur as painless, small, which is 0.5 to 2 centimeter, mobile lumps overlying the bony prominences underneath the skin. These are the delayed manifestations appearing 2 to 3 weeks after the onset of the disease, and these are commonly associated with carditis. Now the typical locations of these subcutaneous nodules include hand, feet, elbows, occiput and vertebra. So this is the image showing the typical rash, that is erythema marginatum. It begins as a pink macule. So this is the beginning phase, which will slowly clear centrally, and in this phase it has totally cleared centrally and leaves only a serpiginous spreading edge, which finally clears away. So this is the typical erythema marginatum, and these are the subcutaneous nodules which are seen overlying the vertebrae, knee joint, then occiput and elbow. So these are the skin manifestations of acute rheumatic fever. Now the other features in ARF include fever and elevated acute phase reactants including C-reactive protein. Now to make the diagnosis, there should be evidence of preceding group A streptococcal infection. So this is essential for making the diagnosis of ARF, except for chorea and indolent carditis, both of which may become manifest many months later. In most of the cases, we don't have positive throat swab culture or rapid antigen test positive, so serological evidence is usually needed. The most commonly used serological tests are anti-streptolysin O, which is known as ASO titers, and anti-DNase B, which is ADB titers. These are most commonly used in clinical practice. Now let's see the diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. So the criteria which is followed is known as Jones criteria. Jones criteria. Now, for all patient populations with evidence of preceding group A streptococcal infection, for diagnosis of the initial episode of ARF, there should be either two of the major manifestations positive or one major along with two minor manifestations positive. On the other hand, for the diagnosis of recurrent ARF, either two major manifestations or one major plus two minor or three minor manifestations should be positive. Now what are these major and minor manifestations? So these are dependent upon the risk of population. So if the low risk populations are considered, we have different major and minor criteria, and for moderate to high risk populations we have different criteria. So what is this low risk population? So this low risk population is defined as the population in which the acute rheumatic fever incidence is less than 2 per 1 lakh population of school age children. Now if the school age is not considered and all age are considered, then this will be changed to less than 1 per 1 lakh of the all age population. This is the prevalence of RHD or ARF incidence. So if this is less than 2 per lakh of school age children or less than 1 per lakh of total population, the ARF incidence is less than this, then these will be considered as low risk populations. Otherwise, these will be moderate and high risk populations. So for low risk, we have major criteria including carditis, which will include subclinical as well as clinical. The subclinical means there are only echocardiographic features of valvulitis. Then there is arthritis. In arthritis, polyarthritis is only considered in the low risk population. Then chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules. Now for moderate to high risk populations, again we have carditis, which can again be clinical or subclinical. In arthritis, along with polyarthritis, monoarthritis as well as polyarthralgia is also considered in moderate and high risk populations. Then the chorea, erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules will remain same. Now in minor criteria for low risk populations, we have now polyarthralgia. Polyarthralgia, fever should be more than 38.5 degrees centigrade, more than equal to this. ESR should be more than equal to 60 millimeter in the first hour, or CRP should be more than equal to 3 milligram per deciliter. There should be prolonged PR interval after accounting the age variability. In moderate to high risk population, monoarthralgia is included in the minor criteria. Fever is more than equal to 38, ESR is more than equal to 30, CRP is the same, and again prolonged PR interval after age variability. So this is the Jones criteria. If any two of the major or one major plus two minor are fulfilled, we can make the diagnosis of initial episodes, and along with this, if three minor episodes are only fulfilled, we can also make the diagnosis of recurrent acute rheumatic fever. Now coming on to the treatment part, the patients with possible ARF should be followed closely to ensure that the diagnosis is confirmed. Echocardiography should be performed on all cases to aid in making the diagnosis. So considering the treatment, there is no treatment for acute rheumatic fever that has proven to alter the likelihood of developing or the severity of rheumatic heart disease. Treatment is just symptomatic. Now this is the exception in case of heart failure, in which the treatment may be life-saving. Rest all the treatment is symptomatic for acute rheumatic fever. Now first let's discuss the antibiotics. All the patients with acute rheumatic fever should receive antibiotics sufficient to treat the precipitating group A streptococcal infection. Now penicillin is considered as the drug of choice, which can either be given orally or intramuscular injection. For oral dose, we have phenoxymethylpenicillin, which can be given 500 mg BD or 250 mg BD in children with body weight of less than equal to 27 kg. Similarly, amoxicillin can also be given 50 mg per kg of body weight, maximum up to 1 gram per day for 10 days. So this was about the oral drugs. We can also give intramuscular benzathine penicillin G, which can be given as single dose intramuscular injection of 1.2 million units or 0.6 million units in children less than 27 kg body weight. Now salicylates and NSAIDs can be used for the treatment of arthritis, arthralgia and fever. Now the drug of choice in this case will be aspirin, which is given in a dose of 50 mg per kg per day, which comes out to be 4 to 8 grams per day in adults. Now these should be given in 4 to 5 divided doses. At higher doses, patients should be monitored for the symptoms of salicylate toxicity which can occur with this dose, which include nausea, vomiting or tinnitus. Now naproxen at a dose of 10 to 20 milligram per kg per day is a suitable alternative which can be given in twice daily dosing. So this is an advantage of naproxen, that it can be given in BD doses. Now the use of glucocorticoids in ARF remains controversial. It is believed to decrease the inflammation in severe carditis. So if given, the prednisolone should be used at a dose of 1 to 2 milligram per kg per day, maximum up to 80 milligram per kg. Now this can be started for days up to 3 weeks. Now bed rest should only be given till active arthritis and arthralgia, and patient should be gradually mobilized to achieve good cardiac function. Now for chorea, in mild cases only calm environment should be provided. For severe cases, carbamazepine and valproate are better than haloperidol, and for severe cases which are refractory to other treatment, we can use steroids, and if it is not responsive to steroids, we can also use intravenous immunoglobulins. Now coming on to the prognosis, the untreated ARF lasts for average 12 weeks. With treatment, patients are discharged within 1 to 2 weeks. Now the inflammatory markers should be monitored every 1 to 2 weeks until they normalize, and we have to do repeat 2D echocardiography after 1 month to determine if there is progression of carditis. Now coming on to the last part of this lecture, that is the prevention of rheumatic fever. So this is divided into primary prevention and secondary prevention. The primary prevention includes elimination of risk factors for the streptococcal infection, example overcrowding. So we should avoid overcrowding. Also, primary prophylaxis is included in this primary prevention, which is to timely complete the treatment of sore throat with the appropriate antibiotics. So this includes timely completion of treatment of sore throat. Now the secondary prevention is the mainstay of controlling ARF and RHD, since primary prevention is not exclusively followed and can be practiced. So secondary prevention is the mainstay of controlling the rheumatic fever. So this includes long-term penicillin prophylaxis to prevent the recurrences. We have to avoid the recurrences, since with every recurrence the risk of RHD increases. So this can be given in the form of intramuscular benzathine penicillin G or oral penicillin V. Sorry, we have spelling mistakes. So if we are giving intramuscular benzathine penicillin G, we can give 1.2 million units or 0.6 million units in less than equal to 27 kg body weight, and this can be given every 4 weeks. If there is high incidence areas, we can also give every 3 or every 2 weeklies, but 4 weeks will be appropriate choice. Alternatively, we can also use oral penicillin V 250 milligram in BD dose for the secondary prevention, or if the patient is penicillin allergic, we can also use oral erythromycin, again 250 milligram BD dosing. Now what is the duration of this secondary prevention? So we have American Heart Association recommendations according to the category of patient. Suppose a patient has developed a rheumatic fever without carditis. So the duration of prophylaxis will be 5 years after the last attack or 21 years of age, whichever is longer. The second scenario includes rheumatic fever with carditis, but there is no residual valvular disease. So for this case, the duration of prophylaxis will be 10 years after the last attack or 21 years of age, whichever is longer. Then finally, we have rheumatic fever with persistent valvular disease, which is evident clinically or on echocardiography. For this, we have prophylaxis of 10 years after the last attack or 40 years of age, whichever is longer. sometimes lifelong prophylaxis is needed. So finally, I have a question for all of you guys. Suppose a child of age 12 years has developed acute rheumatic fever with carditis. Okay, so but there is no residual valvular damage, no residual valvular disease. So what will be the duration of prophylaxis of penicillin in this patient? Kindly comment your answer in the comment box. Thank you so much guys. I hope you like the lecture.